I think because of my experience with losing a baby, it was still all joy, if that makes sense. I remember the girl that came in at the same time as me after we got out of the hospital. It was the first day we walked in the NICU, like being not in the hospital. So we're like wearing normal clothes. And she's like, wow, you look so good. And you're like so happy. And I was like, well, I think because like we've lost a child, and so it's like, we're just thankful to be here and have that baby that's living, And so I think there was some ability to like get through the hard and not hit a wall or not feel that depression because like we've already lived the worst, so like it wasn't the worst.
All right. Well, welcome back to the Breastfeeding Diaries, episode 9. And today we are meeting with my friend Brittany. She is a mom, I would say entrepreneur with a lot of the things that she does, homemaker, homesteader, and she has a really incredible story with her baby who was in the NICU. And there's a lot more to her story that I'm really excited to share. So welcome to the show, Brittany.
Thank you. I'm excited.
Yeah. So first, let's kind of go back to what was your experience around breastfeeding, just kind of growing up, or sisters, aunts, cousins, anything like that that kind of set the tone before you had your first child?
Mm-hmm. I was the youngest. That's kind of interesting actually, because I was the youngest in my whole family, all the cousins, everybody, like the youngest. But I don't remember being around breastfeeding people much. Like I have this funny story. I just remembered it the other day. I did a lifeguard training in college. I was 19 years old after my first year of college. And this lady had like 7 kids. And I was like, what? I was from a family of 3. And she was teaching us these like CPR training. And she just like pops it out and is nursing her babies. And I was 19. I had not been around that. So it was like, we were all like, oh, Lord, I can't believe she did that, and now I'm like, yeah, whatever, like totally different. So I would say, I mean, my experience was very little. I don't remember seeing a lot of people breastfeed, being around it much. And then I guess gradually into like more early adulthood, my sister breastfed. And then I don't know when I really like gained I would say like a strong opinion about like wanting to breastfeed, knowing that was what's going to be best for my baby, like why I wanted to. I don't know. It just kind of came naturally, I guess.
Yeah. So for your first children, what was
Mm-hmm.
the birth experience like? What was the breastfeeding experience? Was it pretty smooth? What did that look like?
Yeah, so I had 3 babies first. I had a total of 5 babies, but my first 3 were all natural births, in a hospital, but all natural. And I breastfed each one of them. It was smooth. It was wonderful. I mean, I'm very thankful because I've had friends who have struggled to breastfeed, and I know it's a struggle. But I was able to breastfeed early. I mean, immediately. And I think the only experience I had that was kind of just a little different was my very first. I used like the nipple shield, that type of thing. And I don't know, I guess really with my other 2, since I'd had some experience with it, I mean, my breasts definitely changed after having my first baby. And so I think it was just easier to feed the second and third babies.
Yeah.
And so those were all great. And then my 4th baby, which today would be his birthday, he would have been 4, but he was stillborn at 40 weeks. So that was a whole different experience. Obviously, I didn't breastfeed him, but I did have to go through drying up my milk. So that was an experience in itself. He was stillborn at 40 weeks and 1 day. We thought we were going into labor, and my placenta abrupted. So he was perfect, ready, but that just happened. And so it was a crazy emergency, very dangerous birth, emergency C-section. And I remember immediately I had to somebody thought about it. I don't know. I hand pumped the tiniest bit of milk to do like some jewelry. So I have like a breastfeeding or a breast milk necklace and ring. But with him, I had to immediately put cabbage in my bra. And I remember even on the day of his memorial, like walking in this dress and trying to look, I don't know, pretty or presentable. I don't even know when I, didn't really care because I was just still so like, can't believe this is my life. But I had cabbage in my bra. So, I had to go through like drying up milk and that experience. And then with baby number 5. He was born at 29 weeks, and he was in the NICU for 6 weeks. And, I did not get to breastfeed him at all, in the NICU till the very, like the last week. I think they started letting me, practice with him. And even then, they were still like, yeah, it's really just they were very, it wasn't gonna be successful almost, or, it's still gonna need to be formula at home, things like that. And so I just even in the NICU, I just pray over him, and, I felt like even the tiniest baby, when I was holding him, I could feel him, almost, still rooting like babies do,
Yeah.
cooking, and I would tell my husband, "Look, I think he would know, and I think he would know what to do if we let him try,"
Yeah.
and, it would just let him try, But then there were a couple of times that when the nurses started letting me try, they would, say, they would do the retracting of what he got in his belly to see how much he got in there, and they're like, "He didn't really get anything, he was just sucking." It was like, "Oh," that was a little
Yeah.
disappointing, but
But
so
let's go
those
back.
were yeah,
Yeah, let's go back a little bit, I think.
yes, please.
So, when you had your first 3 natural experiences in the hospital, was that like an intentional, I wanna have, no epidural, or was it like it just happened because it was fast kinda thing?
No, early on, I watched some documentary. I could not tell you what it's called at this point, but years ago, I had my first baby in 2014. He is 11 now, and I remember growing in this opinion of oh, our bodies are made to do this. God made our bodies to do this. An epidural isn't it's become the norm, but it doesn't have to be. And oh, and we took the hospital classes for first time parents. And oh, I remember seeing when they explained what the epidural was and they showed it all. And I was like, I do not want that. And I remember specifically they said, what did they say? They said, we're going to give you this epidural. And then if it still doesn't work or you need a little bit more, we can give you some pain medicine, but then sometimes the baby will come out groggy. And if they do, then don't worry, we can give the baby something to get them out of it. And I'm like, hold up. So you're saying you're going to give me something that's going to affect the baby, but don't worry, we'll give the baby something else. All in the moments of being born. And I mean, I was young, I guess I wasn't too young. I was 26, and I was just quickly this isn't right, what? And so I quickly got this opinion of I can do this. And so I would just pray over my body, and I would speak things over my body, and I would talk to my husband about remind me these things, remind me I'm made for this, we're doing this, and so I went in knowing I did not want to have an epidural. And, in that first pregnancy and labor, I stayed home as long as possible because I also knew I just want to be in my own environment as long as I can. I love to get in and out of the bathtub, things like that. When I'm in pain, I just want to walk around, do what I want to do. And so when we did finally go to the hospital, it was my first baby. So it took a while, but the pain didn't increase till the last 2 hours. And even then, we did a lot of things to set the tone. It was a beautiful birth experience, everything I probably would have dreamed of, and was able to birth him naturally. And I remember just being high on adrenaline and joy after that birth, and just so happy about it. And yeah, I would say that was the hardest thing I've ever done. And yet also oh, it was amazing, So
At
that
this
was
point, would you say, you were on maybe, a crunchy journey, or do you think you and your husband were already "Yeah, we're gonna have a farm"?
no, that was very early in the stages, learning more natural things. And I mean, just a lot. I can see the layers of an onion peeling back over my life, early on. Um, and it's evolved from there. There's things just man, if I would have known this before, I probably wouldn't have waited 5 years into marriage to have my babies. I would just had them all, who cares? Just have the babies, And so there are things that have evolved in me that weren't there originally. And it was a gradual, slow process. So
Yeah. Yeah, and then, you had the whole, we're gonna live in a camper. I think
yes.
that was
Yeah.
prior to everything that happened with Zion, right?
Yes. Yes. So we had 3 babies. We lived in Abilene, Texas, and we lived there for 13 years, had our 3 babies there, just told beautiful birth experiences. And then we both went to private Christian schools. So we had a lot of student loan debt. So we were like, okay, we just felt like the Lord was calling us out of that. So we're like, we're going to sell our house, live small, live in an RV for a little while. And the week we moved into the RV, we found out we were pregnant with our fourth baby. And I was just like, oh my word, this is like such a joke of the Lord. Like, he's so funny. It's like, of course I would be pregnant the week we move into 200 square feet RV with 3 kids and a dog. And then we move our family to East Texas. And even then, like, I didn't intend to come here and like become a farmer, but here I am, I've been canning tomatoes all day that I've grown and like, preserving our food. But like, that was not my intention. It was just get out of debt, live small. I even think like the living more simple living a more simple lifestyle didn't come until it was a slow evolution, I guess. And
Yeah.
then that fourth baby was the one we had after we moved here and lived small. And I think having him and losing him really made us slow down even more and just learn to appreciate life, like learn to take things a little slower and live simpler, I guess, and
Yeah.
enjoy things around us.
So with that experience, were there any complications during the pregnancy that kind of hinted, or was it just smooth up until the end?
No, there were 0 things that, showed it was a beautiful pregnancy as well. Like I said, he was born at 40 weeks in 1 day, and it was a wonderful pregnancy. I did all the things. I came here, like I said, I got pregnant right when we moved in the RV. So by the time we got here, there was a big snowstorm, and then I finally got like into I actually was gonna have a baby with a midwife because I'd had 3 natural births. I was like, hey, we're moving. I don't get my wonderful doctor anymore. So let's just like go to a birth center and I can have a water birth like I've always wanted. Like, I love birthing babies. And even after having such a terrible experience with Zion, I still like love to talk about birth because it's a beautiful thing. And like, I know like just all the good things that the Lord made with it, and so it's just so fun to listen to stories, no matter how they are, even, cause we all have different stories, but, so we planned to have this natural birth at a birth center and we didn't know like that morning, it was the day after his due date. I thought I was going in labor. I thought my water broke and maybe it had, like, we didn't even get far enough to actually know if it did. But when I got there, instead of the water that I thought was leaking out of me, it was blood and just clots and clots of blood. And so we were rushed to the hospital. Thankfully, it was like a block away, but it was still very dangerous for me. I remember the doctor, I was in and out of kind of consciousness. Like there was one time I started like passing out and all these people were like lifting my legs up above my heart and all this stuff. I remember telling them like, I could hear you, but like, I think they asked, can you hear me? And I was like, can, but I'm about to not be able to, like, I can tell. And that was like my first experience in life, like passing out. And I was very aware, like, of all the things they're doing. And I'm just praying and praying and praying in my head. And I also having contractions. Like that's why I think my water still did break. I was in active labor, like it was painful. Plus, I hear them trying to find a heartbeat, knowing they're not finding the heartbeat.
Mm-hmm.
And finally, the doctor looks down at me and she says, okay, like, your baby's gone, like, point blank. But right now, we have to focus on you because, like, I was dwindling, and they knew there was something wrong. So they rushed me into an emergency C-section, and I had been just clots and clots of blood behind my placenta. And I even like have like I said, today's his birthday. And so we've been thinking about it, I've been looking at pictures and, sharing a video of him, just remembering him. And I even have a picture of my placenta, just like full of blood clots. And it doesn't make sense. Like none of it makes sense. It was a perfect birth. Nothing pointed to this. And I remember something so beautiful though, because all of it was like, coulda, woulda, shoulda, kind of like, surely this isn't our life. And here we are, like grieving this baby. And we got the duty to have him at the hospital with us for 3 days. And get to like, even though he is not alive, we just got to hold him and take pictures of him. And it was such a sweet place for our grieving hearts and to like kind of accept it in a non-accepting way. But I remember my doctor that I had my first year babies with called me, and I missed his call, but I got his voicemail, and it was so, like, healing for my heart because he just spoke to so many lies that were, like, happening in my head of, like, saying, like, "This was not your fault. There's nothing you could have done. Even if I was your doctor with this baby, we wouldn't have caught it. Like, this isn't something you can, like you would barely be able to see this, like, it's not something that just happened. And so that was just so kind, I feel like, of the Lord to, like that this man that lives 6 hours away decided to call me even though I was not his patient anymore, just, like, so kind, and, so that was the experience with that one.
Wow.
Yeah.
Um, so you get out of this, it was a C-section, right? So you get out of
Mhm, yeah,
that,
yeah,
and then you said as far as, like, lactation goes, your
mhm.
body was still just doing the normal thing, like, your breasts don't know that the baby isn't there anymore.
Right, right, and so, yeah, I mean, the milk came, and I just remember just living with I guess it was at the hospital because I remember having cabbage even at the hospital and for days and weeks on, and I was recalling with a sister-in-law who recently lost a baby that was doing cabbage and the how it felt to put cold cabbage on, your breasts that were producing milk and the pain that comes with that when you can't, like, relieve that to feed a baby, and there were so many things like that. It was just like
So did you
it's like
pump at all, or was it just, like you said, a couple drops but
only,
then
like yeah, only the couple of ounces for the milk jewelry. I didn't pump. I thought, like, the women who can lose the baby and pump and donate milk are so strong. It's like I had already been through so much. It's like there's no way. Like, just let it go away and be done. And, like, you know, because it's just there's some things. It's just like when you lose a baby, you're like, it's not fair that your body still produces milk. It's not fair that you still get bills in the mail. Or like the things that happen. It's like none of it should happen. But you can't change it. So just have to
yeah,
live through it and yeah.
wow. And, throughout that, like, healing journey, was
Mhm.
there any thought of, "Let's have another baby," or was it just, you know, soaking in that grief, and how long did that last?
Yeah, you hear a lot, like, when women lose a baby that they'll get pregnant really fast again, right? Like, you see that. I've seen that often. Like, yeah, some people have a baby, like, in the next year between that, like, losing of a baby, even at full term. And now I know why, because when they use the term expecting, you don't really know what that means until you're expecting, and then you don't get to have the baby and you're just left expecting. You expect this baby, and even as much as, like, you want that baby, like, you want your baby that you lost, but there's still this, like, no, my heart was ready for this. And so, like, there was such a yearning for another baby. And it was such a dangerous situation. It took a while to, like, are we gonna do this? But also my doctor suggested, like, giving my body a year, I believe, or 6 months or a year, like, before we tried. And, to really, like, rest and let everything heal and make sure. And they told me, like, "This was just, like, a rare accident. This should not happen again." Like, those were the things, but, like, "Let's give your body a year and let's see." And so I remember quickly talking to my husband because there's just this yearning in us of, like, what? Like, you go through all this. I remember that being one of the first things I felt when they handed him to me, like, surely this isn't it. Like, this isn't we don't get to change this, like, we can't go back. Like, can we, do something different, try again? It's like, this is the hand you're dealt. Like, here's your baby that's not breathing and won't ever breathe, and say your goodbyes that we're taking him, even though you've grown him perfectly for 9 months. And so it was, it was this weird, like, I want this baby, but also, like, my heart is yearning for a baby. And so women who lose a baby and then don't get to ever fulfill that after, man, it's like there was still this hope of, okay, we can still have a baby. And I went through a lot after that of, like, being afraid to have a baby because I didn't want to lose my own life because I have 3 other kids. And so it's like, I don't want to, like, push to have another baby just because I feel this need for a baby if it means, like, I'm going to lose my life and leave these 3 or 4 kids on earth without a mom. There was a lot of really, like, spiraling thoughts that came with that. And honestly, it was only because we did counseling that I believe, like, I was able to go on to have a 5th baby and not, like, just get into some spiraling things. I think there was only one time during the whole pregnancy that I had some like fearful, like kind of like my mind was going a little downhill feelings. But other than that, I was able to control that so much. And I think it was through the counseling we did, because early in pregnancy, it was early in the grieving process, it was very heavy. Like the fear that I would go through, but the desire to have another baby, but just the fear that I would sit in was very heavy. So, we got into counseling really quickly after losing our son. So,
And when you found out that you were pregnant with Maverick, how long after was that? Was it over a year?
so, I had him 2 years after. So we
Okay.
waited a year to start trying.
Okay.
And then we got pregnant pretty quickly. Well, a couple months into trying, but
Yeah.
we lost the baby. We
Oh,
lost the baby, at 5 weeks. Like I was pregnant and then like quickly miscarried. And then we got pregnant. That was in a November, and then in January, I might be off, but something like that.
yeah. And at that
But
point, were you over 35 yet? Or I know that's
yes,
like the 35,
yes, I
the
was.
cutoff
Yeah,
of geriatric or whatever that they
yeah. All
say.
that
Yeah,
that
it's
makes
so funny.
yes. Which my
Um,
doctor didn't actually make me feel like. My sister's had experiences where the doctors made her feel really terrible. Like
yeah,
she's had a baby at 37, 35, and 37, and
yeah,
yeah, they made her feel so terrible. Mine was really kind about that part.
good,
So
good.
yeah.
Um, okay, so at that point,
Mhm.
you find out you're pregnant again. How was that all for your husband? I know you said he was in counseling with you, but how did he feel about that potential of like, hey, your life could be at risk? Was he kind of at peace, or did he have those same doubts?
No, I think probably early on, because, when we were at the hospital with Zion, our son that died, it was all like, is Brittany okay? Is she okay? Is she going to live? Like, our baby's gone, but now, like, is she okay? And then they rush me into the C-section. They leave him like, with most C-sections, a husband can be there, like to an extent, like behind the curtain or whatever, or behind the drapes. But with him, it was like, no, door slam in his face. He's just out there waiting. I'm going in alone. Like, I remember going in and just saying, Jesus, like, I cannot do this without you. Like, I was so scared, and I'm also, like I said, just like not really all there, like still having contractions, just so afraid. And, and so he's out there just pacing and crying and like, what's wrong? Like, is she going to be okay? All the things. So there was a lot of emotions he went through. And I think as also that counseling helped him. And after having that year, we both knew we wanted another baby. It was like, even he will say to this day, like, when you lose a child, it's like, Lord, we'll have as many babies as you want us to have. Bring them on, like no cap, like we used to say when we were pregnant with Zion, we thought he might be our last one. Like, yeah, 4 will be good, whatever. Trying to keep it in our own hands, like we humans do. But, it was like, now he's like, so at that point, he was ready. And I don't think he was overly afraid of that part. I think more than anything, it was like realizing that you can't go into birth so naively. Like, that's one thing he talks about often, is like, I was so naive to think that like nothing could happen,
Mm,
that like these freak accidents could happen. And so we'd had 3 wonderful births. And so he was like, like, he's just shocked. And so it was more like, will the baby be healthy? Like, will we get there? That was one of the things we dealt with a lot. Like, will we get to the end of this pregnancy with a living baby? And that was our biggest prayer. Like, let us get to the end of this pregnancy with a baby to bring home,
yeah. So then how did that pregnancy go?
Yeah.
Aside from the
So,
tears, but physically.
yeah. Also wonderful pregnancy. I felt great. We went to the doctor often, and, he was always very kind of like, if you ever feel any fear or any, questionable things, come in and we'll just check on you. Like, you have like the doors open to you kind of thing. And he also was going to let me do a VBAC, because like I said, I had 3 wonderful pregnancies. I love birthing a baby. And I was like, already having our 5th baby, Maverick, already having him was like our like, not redemption story, but just like our act of faith. Like, this is
Yeah.
us stepping out in faith. Like, we're afraid. We had a terrible experience. We lost a baby. I almost died. Like, Lord, we trust you with this. Like, if you're going to give us another baby, we, we can't control any of it. So we're just trusting you. So it was like a very like big act of faith for us. And so but I really wanted to try a VBAC because I was like, I've done this. Like, I know my body can. Like, can we try it? So he said yes. So we were kind of pursuing all of that. And then I get to, I mean, everything's healthy and wonderful. Baby's growing. We get to the mark where, what is it, like 26, 27 weeks, the viable, viable pregnancy, whatever they call it. I kind of hate that word. But it's, we get past that point, just like, yay, we're in a better place. But then at 29 weeks, do you want me to go ahead and tell just
Yeah,
a little
let's
story of
let's
this?
go.
Okay.
Yeah.
At 29 weeks, like we talked about, we had just gone crunchier and crunchier. And now we, live on a homestead in East Texas, 7.5 acres. We garden and, raise our own animals and, process our own meat and things like that. And so we just evolved from all the things. But I was in the garden with my other son. He was, I don't know how old he was then, 4, maybe. And yeah, 4. And we were, picking stuff. And I remember that morning we had made granola. And I just thought, a couple times I thought, man, it was only like 10 a.m. And I'm like, I'm really tired. Like, I just didn't feel like I had the energy to like do the whole day. Like, I just kept feeling like, oh, I'm tired, And then out in the garden, I kind of felt that. And I realized, like, I think I'm feeling a little out of breath. And then there was something in me that was like, oh, is this a Braxton Hicks? Like, this is my 5th child, and I had never had a Braxton Hicks contraction. Like, when I had contractions, I was in labor. That was my experience. So I was like, oh, maybe that's what this is. And so I was like, I told my husband, like, I think I'm having Braxton Hicks. I was like, I just need to remember because I go to the doctor in 2 days and I want to make sure I tell him. And so that I tell, because they always ask the questions, have you had any bleeding or Braxton Hicks or all the questions? So I was like, I'll tell him. And so I think that I say that to my husband's going to go lunch with someone. And then I was like, okay, I'm just going to see, like, I'm just feeling real weird. I'm just going to see how I feel. With my first son, it was like, I couldn't go to they waited to let me go to the hospital. They asked me, have you felt him moving before I went to the hospital? And I was like, oh, I haven't felt him much. They're like, okay, come on to the hospital then. And I, this time I was like, I'm going to lay down and just see if I feel any contractions with him or not. And then I was like, what am I doing? Why would I wait? Like, that is silly. And so my husband had driven down the road. I call him. I'm like, he was going to lunch with someone. I was like, no, we're not doing that. Like, come back, And I had gone to the bathroom and I remember because I'm a mom of 3 kids at this time. Kids are coming in the bathroom and my daughter came in, but somehow I always say it was a miracle by the grace of God. I noticed the tiniest, lightest pink discharge, like barely anything, but somehow I noticed it. And she's talking to me and still somehow I notice it. And so I called my husband, like, come back. And we decided we're going to the doctor. Well, we tried to call the doctor. I think I'd already tried to call him, but he wasn't in the office that day. So we drop our kids off at our church because we had been talking to some people that day there. So they're like, just freaking by. And so my husband takes off 100 miles an hour, 30 minutes away. I'm not kidding, like going 100 on this highway. And I'm sitting here like, okay, we're taking this. This is an emergency. Like, he is taking it to like all the way.
Yeah.
And I'm still trying to like keep my insides calm and not freak out, over how I'm feeling and the things that are happening. But because of our experience, he's like all the way, like he's up to here, he's going. And we call and they're like, you need to go to the ER. The doctor's at the office today, which is across town. Like, every piece of this is really a miracle in itself, because if I would have gone to the doctor's office, it would be a whole different story. So like, going to the ER was the best thing. But my experience was, my last time at the ER was when I almost died and when I lost my baby. And that's scary to me too. Like, I don't want to do that. Like, let me just come into the doctor's office, just check me, like make sure everything's good. It's all probably fine. Meanwhile, my husband's driving 100 miles an hour. But he also thinks I had to call the ER, let them know everything, tell them our experience, because when we went with Zion, they were not prepared for us. They took forever. They wanted to check us in. They wanted to do all this crazy stuff. And I'm like, meanwhile, bleeding on the inside, my baby is gone. And it was chaos. So he calls and lets them know. So when we get there, thankfully they're ready. And we get into a room and they start checking everything. And for a moment, they say, everything's fine. Everything's good. And my husband just like, he starts crying. We just like take this big sigh of relief, I'm telling these nurses, well, this is our experience. That's why this is so like heavy for us. Like, we're thankful. And he's text our moms, like, everything's fine. Literally, like a moment later, like within moments of texting our family, the doctor's about to walk out of the room. And then he says, wait a second, what's that? And he hears something on the sonogram. They're on the whatever monitor. And he says, that doesn't sound right. And something was off. And he was like, oh no, we're taking this baby out right now. I remember before I went up to the room, I was sitting in this ER where I remember trying to get back there with our son that we lost. And I was just like, Lord, like, I have no clue what's going to happen on the other side of this door. Like, am I going to walk the same road? Like, are we going to lose the baby? Or are we going to be all fine and like just keep going this pregnancy? Um, or am I going to have a baby today? Like, I don't know. And in a way, I was like, after all this, like, crazy stress of all this, I don't really think I want to keep on with this pregnancy. Like, I don't know if I have it in me. Like, this is, the tension's high. And so I was like, if the best thing is to have a baby's day, let's do that. And I went up there. And so in a moment they switched gears and they're like, we got to get this baby out. We look at each other and we're like, okay, like, we're having a baby. I'm 29 weeks pregnant. We're having a baby today. What? Shocked. I, once again, because of my first experience, they had to put me under for the C-section. I asked them to put me under during that one. They gave me the choice for epidural or C-section. And honestly, I was just really afraid. I didn't even know if I wanted to be awake. I don't regret the decision. It was the best decision for me in that moment. And still, I was so scared to go into surgery again, And so we had Maverick. We did not name him until 3 days later because we were not prepared. He was 29 weeks and he was born at 3 pounds and 4 ounces. And to the NICU, I think it took me, over 24 hours before I got to hold him, which that is not very long compared to some parents, but, and then we walked a different journey, but the same thing happened. And that doctor that took him out said that we had probably 45 minutes before my placenta detached again.
Wow.
So like I mentioned earlier, they said it's kind of a freak thing. Like, it doesn't mean it's going to happen again. And it did. The same thing happened again.
What did he hear? Did he ever tell you? Was it
It
a
was
heart rate
something in the heart rate. Something dropped. Yeah. Something in the heart rate dropped. And he was like, wait, what's that? He was like, something like sounded a little bit distressed.
Okay. Wow.
Yeah.
So 24 hours. So how long before you kind of woke up and recovered did you actually get to start pumping?
Oh, man. That is a hard question, and I don't know. I would say it was, probably it was probably that night. So I had him during the day, and it was probably within 12 hours, if not, less. Yeah, because I remember that night. But I remember being the tiniest, little vial, is that what you call it? Of milk and being so proud of like, well, some milk, 29 weeks. Like, this is what we're doing, and then like, it was only several days later and I started pumping like for real. And it's like, okay, like this is going to work. But I know I quickly wanted to pump because I wanted him to have as much breast milk as possible,
And had you pumped at all with your first 3? Like, was it just all, or did you have any experience, or was this like a whole new thing to get out the pump and hook yourself up?
No, I had pumped just off and on if I ever felt like engorged or like stayed out late or the baby happened to sleep longer, I would pump, I would always just have a little bit of milk in the freezer for if we decided to go on a date night or something, but never like, I wasn't one that would like pump after every feeding or things like some moms do. They just like pump a ton. I just pumped like if it was a necessity,
Yeah. So then how did that feel then to kind of go home and have to get up in the middle of the night and pump, but not having your baby with you?
Yeah, it was hard. Yeah, I mean, it was hard to like be like, wait, I have to wake myself up in the night to pump and there's no baby here, like what? And why do I want to do this? But I would, it's like, because I was like, no, I can't like, even though in my head I was like, let me just like sleep through that like 2 a.m. feeding pumping session. But it's like, no, I want my milk supply to be up so that he has plenty of milk so that when he can really drink it, he's getting her milk, things like that,
Yeah. Did you have
So
any concerns with your supply, or was it more than enough? I mean, he was so tiny. It's like he probably
Oh,
wasn't getting very much even from the tube.
right. It was enough. I think some of the most challenging parts of that was, I would go for a max of I could hold him for a max of 4 hours before I'd have to put him back in the box. And so I would, um I wanted to get over there at, like, the perfect timing, like, breastfeeding that I could, like, hold him for the 4 hours and then put him back. This was eventually when I was home and coming back and forth. Well, I live, like, 30 minutes away from the hospital, and also I have 3 kids at the time that are home, and then so I have to it's at least a 5 or 5.5 hour stint of my day, and I went every day,
Wow.
for 6 weeks. And the challenging part was not only am I, like, getting people to, like, watch my kids during that time, driving and coming back, but the challenging part was, like, at some point, within 6 hours, I need to be nursing, but, like, who has time for that? I'm trying to, like, get back to, like, relieve whoever has my kids, and so that was probably more of a challenge because I'd wanna hold them as long as possible, but then they're like, "Well, now that you've been holding them, your body will produce more, so, like, you should pump now." But I'm like, "I know that, but that's another 20 or more minutes, and I need to get back to get my kids." Like that kind of pressure of, like, "Someone's watching my kids, and it's been 5 hours." So, I remember that being more difficult. Like, there were sometimes I would have to I would just it took too long, so I would just get in the car and be like, "Oh, I'll pump at, like, hour 7 or 8 by the time I get everyone settled," and it would be a little long, but thankfully, he always had milk.
Mhm. So did you use, like, a wearable pump or anything, or which pump did you use?
I did get one because I thought, well, on that drive, and I maybe did it a handful of times because it just wasn't an awesome one. It was that someone, like, let me borrow it. It probably wasn't like one that people rave about or love, but so I don't remember the brand, but I did try it thinking it would work in the car, but it wasn't amazing. So, I just thought, I used it a couple times if it just felt like too much, but otherwise, I would just wait till I had a chance.
So, let's see, you were having to do this whole leaving the kids, driving over to the NICU, and, oh, that must have been so exhausting for 6 weeks too. Like, at any point, did you hit, like, a low point of, like, "I just can't do this," or any, like, postpartum, like, depression or anxiety or anything like that?
I think because of my experience with losing a baby, it was still all like joy, if that makes sense. Like it was challenging. And like still sometimes I'm like, I can't believe I did that for 6 weeks. Like, how the heck did I do that? And I barely remember it. There are things I'm like, wait, I have like this little memory and like I really don't remember it. Like it feels very foggy, like some of the memories. It's really kind of weird. Like somehow I just made it through. But I remember the girl that came in at the same time as me, the same day and had her baby. We'd seen each other in the NICU, and then after we got out of the hospital, like, it was, like, the first day we walked in the NICU, like, being not in the hospital, so we're, like, wearing normal clothes, and she's like, "Wow, you look so good," and you're, like, so happy and, like, whatever, and I was like, "Well, I think because, like, we've lost a child, and so it's like, we're just thankful to be here and have that baby that's living, and so I think there was some ability to, like, get through the hard and not hit a wall or not feel that depression because, like, we've already lived the worst, so, like,
Mm,
it wasn't the worst,
yeah.
so,
And did Maverick have any health issues, or was it just, the usual with NICU? Or for those that don't know about preemies,
yeah.
like, they need oxygen, they had sometimes are on a CPAP, like, can you kind of explain what he needed in the NICU?
So, it was all very, like, incredible, actually, like, he was on oxygen for, like, the first couple hours, so, like, nothing very long. He had to do the jaundice light for a little while. He He had, like, different tubes, but they were pulling him off the stuff so quickly, it feels like he did so well, like, when people would ask how he was, I'm like, he's just small, like, he's fine, like, he's just gotta get bigger, and so that was the biggest thing, he just needed to grow. He had no issues. There was one time they had to do a scan on his bowels, and it was like, "This could be bad." But we just prayed and prayed, and, like, they did the scan, and it was all fine, and they were like, "It might not be what we think it is, but there could be this issue." And I remember like it was a very stressful, like, because they told us like the worst of the worst, this could be what we're dealing with, but then thankfully it wasn't. And so, thankfully he was fine. We had to do if your baby's on oxygen, you have to do like eye exams afterwards, which if you're a NICU mom, I mean, you've had to do that. It is the worst thing ever. It's terrible to watch them do the scans behind the eyeballs. It's like insane what they do with those tiny babies, in their eyes, but
I don't
it
think
was
they
all
did that
fun.
in front of me. I wonder if
Oh
they did
man.
that when I wasn't there. Because I don't
Oh, yes.
remember
So,
them
okay.
doing that.
Originally, they do it at the hospital. Yes, they probably take him and do it. But his next appointment to do it again was like, it was like the next week, and we got out of the NICU. So
Mm.
I had to take him to the eye doctor, and I had to hold him, and they literally spread his eyelids and are like behind his eyeball. It's like the craziest thing you've ever seen in your life,
Wow.
and sad. I mean, they numb it all, and they put these drops in there that help it, but it was really insane. For such a like, because when he came home, he was still only like 5 pounds. He's still tiny. And so, but that was the only thing. But even that, like his eyes were all good, and things like that. So
Was
there
there
was,
any, I know for me, like being more crunchy, I felt like everything was a battle. I was
yeah.
constantly having to say, like, what's this? What did you give
Yeah.
him? They gave him vitamin K and eye ointment, like behind my back, even though I had signed
Uh,
something to say they wouldn't. And then they wanted to put like Neosure in my milk, and they were like, oh, we don't really even know what it is. They called it human milk fortifier. And I was
uh,
like, do you
uh,
practice
uh,
this? And
uh,
so for me, I just felt like I was constantly like battling them. And for me, because it was my first baby, I think that was good because it taught me like you have to be a mama bear and you can't just
yeah.
let these doctors run and nurses run over you. But yeah, what was your experience like?
Yeah, I asked all those questions too, and I like when they did the milk fortifier, I was like, but like, why is my milk not enough? And you say this is human milk, like what? But it's like they explained to me, they take like the most nutrients out of this human milk, and so they're giving him like all nutrients. But I really push for like, but can we give him mostly my milk? Or like, how long does he have to be on this? It's like it is hard as a NICU mom. You want to push for the things you believe in and you trust, and also like, but is this what's right for the baby? Is this, is it going to mess him up? It's not like he's just a healthy, normal baby. It's like, and so there was a lot. But I think when the nurses like understood kind of like how strongly I was about like, I don't want to use formula or things like that, or, like they would push. There were some nurses there that like would help push for like, well, yeah, let's try to like not have to use that. Let's just use your milk and see how he does, kind of thing. And so it's helpful when you can like get to know some of the nurses and be able to like them to understand who you are, I guess, and what you believe to an extent. And to be able to talk kind of forwardly together to like, hey, what does he really need versus like, what do I really want him to have?
Yeah.
And so there was some of that. But I mean, even when we brought him home, they told me like to mostly feed him formula, and I fed him formula once,
Yeah.
one time, and I never opened that canister again, and I just nursed him, and he's a healthy, almost 2-year old now. Like I just did it. I was just like, I can't do this. I don't want to do it. I think he's fine. If I would tell myself if I go back to the doctor and he's like shrinking in weight, then I will. But like, let me just see.
Yeah.
Like he's doing fine. He's growing. And so I just nursed him and he just kept, growing. So
So when
yes.
he finally got discharged, like you kind of had done some nursing a couple of times, like leading up to that. And
Mhm.
then once he was discharged, what was that day like? Like going home with him finally, and then transitioning him to nursing.
Yeah. I mean, it was definitely surreal. Like this, wait, we actually get to bring him home, or like our kids actually get to meet their brother, because they hadn't get to meet him at all in 6 weeks, and so it was a very big celebration. And then it was also like nerve wracking. Like we have all these kids and we had concrete floors and he's 5 pounds. Like he's so tiny and like, just like this, like, oh, he's so little. But not so much like we weren't ready to bring him home, so it's like bring him. But yeah, it was a celebration. It was exciting. And then there was also this weird, like, how do we like, I'm 6 weeks postpartum at this point, like, we've been living life because we didn't have a baby home, and, like, are we, like, reclusing ourselves back into, like, the, like, postpartum time with this baby at home? Are we not? What are we doing? That was a little confusing, like, for my own, self of, like, do we go to events that we're invited to, or do we not? Like, I'm not my body's not postpartum. My body's doing, I'm, like, 6 weeks out. I know that's not very far, but it was still, like, I didn't have a time to, like, just rest
Yeah.
because I was back and forth from the NICU driving myself, and there wasn't a ton of recovery because it was just like, I gotta get to the hospital, be with the baby, then be home and be a mom, and so it was that was a little weird of a feeling of, like, how do I navigate all that?
Yeah, that's how it was for us too. Like, we brought him to church the first week and we just
Yeah,
showed him off. We were like, "This is our baby. We have a baby." And I'll hear people say like, "Oh, I would not bring my kid out for the first 3 months or whatever." And I'm like,
yeah,
"Psh, not me." Like, I was
yeah,
like, "He's out of the hospital and everyone and their mother is gonna meet this baby."
yeah.
Like, I didn't even
Yeah.
care that he was like preemie. I was like, "You can kiss him." Like,
Oh,
he needs like love. He was being
yeah,
like in this
yeah.
cold hospital bed.
Yeah, yeah,
So
but
good. Okay, so then did he kinda, like, wake up and just say, Mommy, I want booby?" Or was he, like, laying asleep and you kinda had to wake him up and kinda get him was he, like, tired and lethargic, or was he just like, "Yeah, give
it
me
was a
milk?"
little it was a little of both, but I mean, really, the nursing process was really pretty simple with him, and honestly, I think a lot of it was just like I said early, with my first kid, I would just pray over my body and my pregnancy and my birth, and I did the same with him, like, every day in the NICU, I had this certain book that I would read and declare things over him and his body and pray over our experience and how nursing would be and just, like, speak life into all the things, and I really feel like I can see so many of those prayers answered in, like, the coming home and, like, nursing home and how fluid it went. It just went so smoothly, and, like, yeah, he was, like a newborn baby for a long time. Like, I do think that is one sweet thing of the NICU experience and the, like, being born early, and it's like, I feel like I had a newborn baby for, like, 6 months, and it's like I didn't even get to have my 4th baby at home, we lost him, and so it was a sweet, like, he's like a newborn for so long in such a sweet way, not in a way that's like, "Oh, I have to wake up." It's like, no, in such a sweet way, we just get this tiny baby for so long, for extra. They're not, like, growing out of all the things so fast, it's like we just get to, like, have a baby for so long, and so, um, we would have to wake him up some to nurse him, but really it was like he really did it pretty smoothly.
And I feel like he stayed kind of, like, longer, leaner, lankier. Did the pediatrician ever worry about that, or was it just like, "Hey, he's growing, he's fine?"
Yeah, no, she never worried about it. I mean, we have a pretty good pediatrician that's like, she's on board with some of the natural things, and when I said, like, I've only been nursing him, she wasn't like, "Oh, no, yeah," she was fine with it. He was doing good. She, believed he would, catch up to things eventually. And now at almost 2, he has. But, I think I got so used to him being so little that, like, when people be like, "Oh, he's so tiny," I'm like, "Oh, is he?" Like, I don't even it just feels normal to me at this point. But, when I look back at pictures of that first year, I'm like, "Oh, he just looks," even when he, like, is more alert and, like, growing, he was still so tiny, like, and so it's just
And
funny to see that.
did he take a little bit longer to meet milestones? Did y'all do any therapy or just kinda let him figure it out?
No, we didn't do therapy. There was nothing that was lagging. Like, he always caught up. Like, I would say he kind of matched what his due date would have been. Like, so you could see it was like, what was that? We had him in July. He was probably 2 to 3 months behind, but he was always on time. Does that make sense to the due date? And so it took him, like 3 months probably longer than our other kids took to walk, but it would have been right had he have been born at the time he was due. So, there were a lot of things like that that just it took a little longer, but now it feels like even, a lot of times my other kids, they would start really picking up their vocabulary at age 2, like really talking, and I already see that in him. And so, and the doctor would tell me like by age 2, that's when we expect them to be kind of like at their norm. And I feel like I already see that with him.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
how it's been for my preemie too, where, like, I look back and he really just caught up around 18 months. And
Yeah.
then it
Yeah.
was like he finally walked, he caught up with his weight gain and everything. And kind of the journey I've been on now is like my second baby's full term, but he
Mhm.
is as delayed as my first. He is also
Mhm.
small. And we have a different pediatrician, and this will be for a future episode, but she is very
Oh, yeah.
concerned about his weight. And it's just been hard because I've been through, like, having a preemie, and I'm like, I know what it's like to have a small baby, and so to me,
Right.
this full-term baby, he feels huge, but apparently he's small, and I'm just like, we made it to 12 months for breastfeeding, like, we haven't had to worry about, like, formula or anything, but at the same
Yeah.
time, it's like, okay, maybe I just have small babies. Like, I've seen
Yeah.
NICU babies that get huge. I've seen preemies,
Right.
26 weekers that chunk up. So I know that it's more genetic necessarily than just, oh, they were born early.
Right.
It's kind of
Right.
my theory.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, okay, let's talk about a topic
Um,
that to kind of close out that I feel like you would enjoy, which is the fitness side of things. So I know
yes. Yeah.
that's been something that you talk about a lot is,
Mhm.
breastfeeding, but still losing weight and getting fit and keeping up your milk supply. So tell me a little bit about that journey.
Yeah, so I've been in the fitness world industry for over a decade. When I got pregnant with my first son, I always just dreamed of like being a stay-at-home mom, but like teaching fitness classes. And I did. I got certified in yoga early. And after I had our first son, I took a big leap of faith and quit my full-time job and stayed home. None of it made sense on paper, like money wise, but we did it. And I would teach tons of yoga classes and loved it. Like I was raising my baby and getting to teach classes. And I did that. And then after baby number three, I didn't teach as many classes outside of my house. I began doing like online fitness training. And I will say, after having Zion, I really just pulled back. I mean, it was just life altering. I had no momentum, no desire. I remember thinking like I was just, doing whatever I wanted and thinking like, oh, I'll get to it eventually. I'll get back to my like fitness stuff eventually. Like, I always loved a like postpartum health journey. Like I loved being postpartum and feeling like yourself again and be able to push yourself in fitness and watch your body change again. And I was never a mom that really like hyper focused on like, well, can I do these exercises? Because what if it affects my milk supply? I just went all in and would like take care of my body and my milk supply stayed up and I would work out and I wouldn't stress about it and my milk supply stayed up for all my pregnancies. But after losing our son, I gained 50 pounds. There was a lot of like not trusting my body. I thought this pregnancy was wonderful. And then this happened. And then being like frustrated at my body, not really caring because like there's way more important things in the world than caring about my fitness and my health. And so there was a lot of that. But then with 50 pounds, more than I'd ever, weighed besides pregnancy, I became really insecure and like mentally struggled where I hadn't had that before. Like that. I'm a pretty confident person naturally. And so that was a really big shift. I remember like, just doubting even things like in the bedroom. My husband, like my own mental state, like he never said anything about my body in a negative way, but it was just, mentally we do that. And I remember really just struggling, even just to trust myself that I was capable of things. And as a fitness instructor, as a health coach, I've always taught women like I feel like our health is one of Satan's biggest strategies to like get us down because we doubt ourselves. We don't have confidence. We can't live out who God created us to be because we're stuck in our head of like self-doubt and shame and insecurities. Like we're not even confident in our clothes. So how can we go be confident and like walking out and like bold things that he calls us to? And so I was living that. Like here I am and like here I am, like living it. And so after having Maverick, I yeah, it was a year after having him and I was like, okay, I've got to change and like get back into this. And so I actually got certified in becoming a macro coach, and I do health and fitness through the Faster Rate of Fat Loss and help women 35 plus. I mean, of all ages, but that's really where I focus, like 35 plus, to balance your hormones and boost your metabolism. And we do it in a way that, like, it's not a diet. You're gaining muscle because as women, we need to be strong. We don't just need to lose weight, So you're losing weight because you're doing all the right things, but you're also gaining muscle and staying strong. And even now, like I said, Maverick he'll be 2 this month and I still nurse him, at 2 years old. And it's never affected my milk supply because I know how to fuel my body with the right foods, with enough food. And so I can help women like that, even if they're nursing, to, figure out what their body needs. I do custom macronutrients for women. So if you're nursing or you're pregnant, we like know what your body needs and can set those macros for you. Or women who just want to lose weight or get stronger, we set those macros and I coach them through a program and really love it. And for me, after losing that weight that I gained, I just, not that your weight affects it all, but it does. We're women, it does affect it. But when you're working on yourself and you're taking care of yourself and you're focused on your health and you're making time for it, even as a mom to 4 kids, homeschooling, homesteading, like I make time for myself. Like there's a confidence in me because I'm cutting out that time. And there's a focus in me on other, like, to be able to be the best me because I've given a little bit of time for myself, and my kids get to see that too. And they're always working out with me. It's not just my time. I work out at home, so they're with me most of the times, but they get to see that and I get to demonstrate that for them. So
Yeah. So that started really after he was about a year. Because I feel like for me at least, my body does not understand that we're gonna lose weight. And maybe
yeah,
that's because I haven't done macro coaching. But
yeah.
my body's like, as soon as I get like my menstrual cycle back, now
Hmm.
the second time now, it's like, oh, okay. And then I don't change anything and I'll start losing weight. But
Yeah,
it's taken me 10 or 11 months. So it's really I learned like don't even try before that because I'm like,
yeah,
I'm gonna sit there looking at the scale and just be disappointed.
yeah.
Because I did like whole 30 and I lifted and I did hit and I did all these things and like the scale would not budge, and I was just like, "Let me just accept that," and then this time around, getting closer to 12 months, got my cycle back, and it was like, "Ah," my body was like, "Okay, we accept."
Feel more like myself. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. I mean, after having Maverick, I still worked out and I tried, but I would say I didn't really focus in on what I was eating very much, and I still kind of was up and down and not all in. And so it took me like finally after a year, I was like, okay, like I need to figure this out because I am. I guess it wasn't a full year, maybe it was like 6 or 8 months after having him, and I was like, I've got to figure this out because I just felt so bad about myself, and just self doubt a lot, and so I kind of dialed it in and focused in, and my body began to change. And so from the past year, I, lost 30 pounds of that weight and just feel stronger and more confident and just thankful that I finally jumped all in because it was easy to stay where I was, but it was also hard to stay in that place of self doubt and not trusting myself and lacking
yeah,
confidence, things like that. So
yeah. Okay, so he's about to be 2 or he's 2 now,
he will be
and
in like
he will
2
be
weeks.
okay, so
Yeah.
he like, "I just still want mommy's milk," or is he moving towards, like, weaning and you're just kinda letting it ride, see where it goes?
He definitely still wants mommy's milk, but, eventually when I wean him, I feel like he'll sleep a lot better. I mean, he sleeps fine. He sleeps through the night, but he just gets mad after after I feed him and he's done. He's like, "No," like, "I don't ever wanna be done." And I'm like, "Okay, but you're fine." You just ate like a full dinner and you're having milk just to go to bed. But, he eats fine. He's a great eater, and then he has milk, but eventually, I've always nursed my babies pretty long. Something else I did that I don't know where that came from, but I did. And usually it was I would nurse them till I like got pregnant with the next kid. But um, so I don't know how long I'll nurse them. I don't really have the plan, but we'll see. So
Yeah. That's so great too. I feel like
yeah.
that's like you said, having that longer newborn season, it was like God kind of giving you that time back and then
Yes. Yeah.
getting to have the nursing and the cuddles. Cause I think some people, I've heard some
Yes.
people, their baby gets out the NICU and they just exclusively pump. And it's like, okay, that's good. That's
Mhm.
still mommy's milk. That's still breast milk. Great.
Mhm.
But
Yeah.
I think there is something to having that bonding experience of getting to
Yes.
nurse and what I love about your story is just, like, the proof that that's possible,
Yes.
um, because and then a lot of people also either they make it through that time while their baby's in the NICU, they get home and they can't figure out the transition,
Yeah. Yeah. For sure.
and I think the key thing for me was when you said you closed that can of formula and you, like, walked away from it. I think that
Yeah.
was really the key moment there because you could have just been like, "Okay, well, let's do this."
Uh-huh.
And maybe because it was already you'd already had children, like, you had that confidence as a mom of, like, milk
Yes.
is
Yeah.
enough. Um, so it's like God just worked it all out. So,
Right. There's a little bit of like a crunchy rebel in me that was like, no, I'm not gonna do it. We're gonna check my milk and make sure it's splitting because I think it is. But yeah, you're right. Probably like having had other experiences, I felt pretty confident to do that. If I would be a first time mom or having like your own mom or mother-in-law's voices in your head of like, you better do what they say, like we don't know what outside sources we have, especially if you're a first time mom, like that is hard to be confident to just like do what you feel is right if someone else and other people are telling you, what to do.
yeah, I
So,
agree.
yeah.
Great. Well, do you have any other, like, tips or advice for moms, whether it's breastfeeding or mother related that you wanna share
Yeah,
before we wrap up?
I would just say, even just the time in the NICU, like to be intentional with your time while you're holding your baby, while you're sitting by your baby. We sometimes it can feel daunting or like you're tired or you're worn out from it. But we bought a book from someone in our church in Abilene, and it's called We Shall Decree. And it's specifically for moms in the NICU. And she had an experience where she had a grandbabies in the NICU, and they're just declarations over your baby every day. And I read them every day, and I journaled about it, and I still have the book. It's like part of our like baby stuff now, of like my prayers in the NICU. But just praying over your baby and declaring good things over your baby, and even over your milk, and to not be afraid to question things or to understand things more. Like, don't just sit and be like, oh, well, they told me this. It's like, but why? Ask why, because they should be able to tell you. And then if people want to connect with me, I'm at Brittany Suell on Instagram. So
Well, thank you so much for being on this episode. For those of you who are listening, if you want to connect with us, we are on Instagram at the Breastfeeding Diaries podcast, or you can email us at thebreastfeedingdiaries@gmail.com, and we'll see you next time. Thank you.